From the Green Room Studios at Bates Nursery in Nashville, Tennessee, it's Gardening Inside Out, a podcast with highlights from our Saturday morning live show, answering all your gardening questions, giving you plant advice for any space in your life. Let's start the show.
Hey, y'all. It's Caroline Gann again.
Hey, y'all. Austin Lowen here.
Hi, it's Tyler Blankenship.
And it's raining. Again.
Welcome to February in Middle Tennessee.
Cloudy, rainy, kind of
Yucky.
And
Seattle-like, to be honest.
But you know, I did sow a bunch of seeds
Well,
earlier this week.
then
And
this
I
will be
did
helpful.
Not water them in, so they are getting there.
That'll be perfect for them.
Yeah.
It's not like a crazy rain either. It's kind of a nice, soft, gentle rain.
It was pretty crazy at like 4 this morning.
Yeah.
It was coming a flood, as my mom would say.
Well, David did say in his newsletter, but not excessively so is what he titled it. And I do feel like we're just getting kind of mild, middle of the road, everything right now,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is not bad for temp plants and planting this time of year.
No.
It's not bad at all.
We're getting tons of seed questions lately, it seems. We're fully stocked with seed right now, and people are coming in to buy them, asking when to drop them, when to sow them, all that good stuff. Good
Yeah.
time to do that. Caroline is on the ball about it. She's already got it going, and the rain's helping.
I think we're trying to take away the stigma as well of having to start your seeds indoors. You don't have to do it.
No.
You know, a lot of people do it to get their plants out as early as possible because those starts literally can't survive outside at that time of year. So you don't have to. You can just set out right now. You can take your little packet, rip it open, just sprinkle a little here and there and see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, we want the best results we can get with our money, and, you know, seeds are still fairly cheap. You get a lot of them. It's a good way to get a lot of plant material for cheap, but you're not always going to get 100% germination. It happens, but if you sow in great numbers, you can always thin out later. So heavy on the front end.
So heavy on the front end. You know, I always buy tomato starts and I plant them, but I haven't really talked about how I always have volunteer tomatoes. It's usually those yellow pear, little bite-sized tomatoes, little snacking tomatoes.
Vigorous.
That will just pop up, and it's like they know the right time to come up. They don't really come up before the frost. They say, now's my time to shine, and then I'll transplant them into my tomato beds.
That's the thing.
That's a great example.
But like even tomato seeds are already out for me and sitting dormant. Granted, I did not buy any seeds and plant them, but they're already in my beds from last year.
And that just goes to show you what nature does and what it is. And the whole reason plants flower for us is so that they can set seed. And then they set that seed in that delicious little fruit. And, you know, the fruits process and all the process of seeds is maximum dispersal. As far away from the mother plant as you can get it. So that's why fruits are tasty. So animals will come in and eat on them and then spread them about far away from the plant. So, you know, the seeds can germinate when they're ready to germinate. And tomatoes are no different, especially, like you said, the cherry tomatoes. My God, they freely pop up every year.
Oh, yeah. All over my beds. And really in my yard, they'll pop up. I mean, I move everything to like a brush pile, so they'll all kind of spill out on my way there. It's like a little trail of tomato plants.
I know, it's almost like there's no such thing as an annual plant, really, if they're able to go to seed.
Right. Yeah.
Like most annuals, especially things like, if y'all know you've ever grown like holy basil. Like basil, it's like one of the first to get affected by frost and freeze. Like it turns to mush immediately in the fall whenever it gets cold. But they set out seeds so much that they reseed every single spring, and they can take over.
Holy basil is actually one of my favorite plants. I use it. It's not like a true basil. It's different, and it doesn't taste like a basil. But like you said, I 1 year scattered seeds in one of my beds, and I've never had to do it again. And I always just have a ton. I actually have to pull a lot out and throw them out because I have too much.
I know. Like they're vigorous.
Yeah. With some plants, you'll notice diminishing returns every successive year if you don't sow more seed. If they're not a variety that produces vigorous seed. So just be mindful of that. You might have to add a little bit more to keep things beefed up. And that could also be in the annual world, because annuals, I mean, those plants don't really live here. Some of them might not even get to produce enough seed to come back the next year, especially if you're cutting them.
Right.
And then some things are just ridiculously vigorous. Take something like, say, celosia. If you've ever grown that plant, God, if you let that go to seed, you're having that come back pretty much every year and bigger and better. Like they can come up all over the place.
They get stronger and stronger. My Gumfrina, that one comes back a lot because it reseeds. I love that plant. I didn't know what it was before I started working here, and I learned from you and Ann.
I like Gomfrina. I've got it in the bed. It pops up freely.
We love seeing those Gomfrina fanatics who come in and just they want it. They're searching it out, and that's a phenomenon that was new to me too when I started working here.
It's a great plant, and it makes a great dried arrangement. So does Liatris, which I didn't know. I had cut some right after it bloomed. I never want to cut them back. Because, you only really get one bloom from each stem, so you don't have a lot of blooms. And I decided to cut a couple and bring them in, and then I didn't refresh the water, and it had dried out, and I didn't even realize it. And it's still just as vibrant purple as it was in the summer.
Wow. Interesting.
I have it with a bunch of eucalyptus right now. Looks great.
Eucalyptus is such a good filler material for bouquets and arrangements.
You know what else is?
What?
Heuchera flowers.
Heuchera flowers. Ugh.
Oh, it's so good. We talked about it yesterday.
If you missed the no down, Caroline goes on about heuchera, and Austin's like, heuchera?
It sends up so many little bloom spikes, if you will. I mean, it's a tall little flower that shoots up with these dainty, tiny little flowers. Austin's looking all annoyed right now.
Dispersed clouds.
But you put them in your arrangement. They sit up above it like 6 inches, and they kind of spill over. It adds so much texture.
I guess in an arrangement, I could see how it could be good mixed with other things, but heuchera blooms do not do it for me.
Yeah, but neither do zinnia blooms.
On and on about the zinnias again.
I love it. But yeah, it's seed time, flower time. I mean, we're all getting the itch to start planting and seeing flowers and all of those annuals come up, which it's not time for that yet. But we are starting to get pansies in at the nursery. We're starting to get some really great perennials.
Oh, yeah. My pansies in the ground look really, really good right now. They're starting to kind of reflush with some blooms.
On my way into work this morning, I noticed that mine in containers are still blooming, but in the ground, the foliage looks good, but I haven't had blooms on them. But I saw my first big giant bloom this morning.
Yeah, that's kind of how mine are doing too. After that real cold event and snow that we had, the snow was a great pack around the pansies, so they were totally fine. But it did mess up the flowers on them, and all the flowers turned to mush pretty much. I need to get out there and deadhead them. I haven't done that yet. But there's, like Caroline said, I've got a patch of probably 18 or so. And there's at least 3 or 4 that are blooming nice. I mix both violas and pansies together. So
speaking of the snow, Austin, we're probably starting to now see a little bit of cold damage on some plants. I'm seeing some euonymus with some leaf damage again that was damaged in the previous crazy freeze. And I mean, most of this is going to be superficial. But does that have to be pruned off, or do you think that it'll just fall away and you just need to,
once a new flush happens on our broadleaf evergreens in the spring, like once new stuff does emerge, you typically do see a little bit of shedding from those older leaves that are on the plant. But like you said earlier, it's a little bit aesthetic. If you had a euonymus that was like 4 feet tall, then obviously we didn't have a snowpack that was 4 feet tall. So all the leaves were still, they still had a bunch of, weather on them that didn't have snow covering them. So
it's basically what happened in places.
Yeah. There's like a Cuba a little bit, shows a little bit of signs of just an off color scenario on the topmost parts of the leaves, but nothing like last year that just whacked them.
Yeah.
So this year should be a lot better for that.
My osmanthus got whacked yet again.
Oh, that's because it's osmanthus.
But it smells so good. But I will never plant another one here in Middle Tennessee.
It's a little risky.
It was. But it was great while it lasted. I had a season of full blooms.
Vicariously through your stories about your osmanthus.
It's been a journey.
Yeah.
But it's still there. Still got some leaves that just whacked it up top. And it was only like 1.5 feet, maybe 2 feet high.
Yeah. So it was a little guy.
It was a wee little guy. He's trying. He's pushing back out. It was like 5 foot before the 2022 freeze. But that's what plants are.
Trial and error.
Trial and error.
All right.
Well, let's get you a trial of this here show that we have.
And what was the date for it?
February 10th.
Saturday, February 10th. That's right. Let's get into it.
Cool. Y'all enjoy.
I know that Yep.
Things are beginning to emerge after a week of warmth. We start to see flowers begin to emerge.
My hellebores are glorious.
Austin, what are you hearing people begin to inquire about mostly?
I think just beginning to inquire, I think is the word. Like this week, we finally feel that first little uptick, that little just breath of spring, and people are feeling it as well. So people are out. I mean, we've seen more people this week for sure. In January around here, it's pretty dead. Nobody's really coming out all that much. But this week, we really saw an uptick in people. So that's good to see. I mean, still a lot of houseplant people. Caroline's World is still hopping in there, and people are buying that. But there's people, I mean, peak carts loaded with hellebore this week. We've got the best selection of hellebore in the mid-state, probably the whole state, to be honest with you.
Wow.
Hundreds of hellebore that are in full bloom, showing their full color, and there's some really pretty ones. I know I've talked about hellebore before and how they annoy me when the blooms turn down and they don't look up at me, but now they're really making new hybrids and new cultivars of ones that really don't point perfectly up, but they're at least like halfway up, so you can really see all their glory.
What kind of colors?
So are you saying, Austin, that you feel a little dissed by the hellebores?
Yeah.
Because they're not showing you your proper respect.
Yes,
they're
exactly what I'm saying.
Well, they're bending the knee. I mean, think about it, Austin. They're bending the knee to you, so it's all good.
I guess if I think about it that way, but
Still annoyed.
It kind of.
What kind of colors are you seeing over there?
We got some deep burgundy colors. We got some white. We got some soft pink. We had one that was like a white and yellow together. It was beautiful.
Stunning. And some that are really tall, like the blooms actually go taller than you would typically see. So
And
they
then
make great cut flowers.
And then some super squat and tight flowers, like really tucked in the foliage. So there's a number of varieties. If you're needing a shade-loving evergreen perennial that blooms this time of year, hellebore's the way to go, and we got them.
And it's really the only one that does what it does. Too.
Yeah.
It is a showstopper this time of year, and it's the one that how could you not be impressed by it, because it has no competition. There's just nothing else that's doing anything right now to speak of. More will be coming along, but when it comes out to the things that are going on early in the season, it really dominates.
It just makes you happy to walk across the dead yard and see a flower, man.
Hey, Steve on the Facebook page says a nice rainy morning in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. Hellebores are really starting to bloom here in the bluegrass. So all over the place. I know mine are blooming. Well, mine aren't quite fully open, but the buds are peeking up out of my pine straw. That's all around them, and I can't wait.
And when you say shade tolerant and shade loving, you are correct, because I have a stretch of them that's about 10 feet long. The ones that are more shaded than are doing much, much, much better than the ones on the other end of the row.
Yep.
Yeah, mine are in full shade that I have planted.
They're fine in full shade.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're
they really
great.
are.
Hey, Shannon's wondering, Austin, curious to know if Austin is as anxious for warm spring days as my forsythia.
Shannon.
You gave it away, Tyler.
Oh, Shannon.
Of course, I'm going to put him on blast.
Specialist out here, good friend of mine. Yes, Shannon, I am excited like your forsythia. I'm ready for it. You know I am. Why would you even ask that?
He's ready. But we are also ready for questions.
Yes,
so let's
we
go
are.
ahead
Let's
and
do
dive
it.
in.
Yeah.
We're going to
Let's
start with
do it.
Camellia. Best locations for camellias in Middle Tennessee home gardens.
All right. Camellia. Okay, so camellia is a somewhat shade-ish loving plant, but not like full shade. Okay, it's not like your hellebore that prefers the full shade. It is a sun lover for at least roughly 4 to 6 hours, depending on what time of day you're getting it. So we want to try to avoid that nasty late in the afternoon sun if we can help
Can't
it.
handle it.
Yeah, it doesn't want it. Like it could probably live, but it'll stress a little bit. So what we really want is that like morning to midday sun, to where it's getting a nice direct sun for about 4 to 5 hours roughly, and then we're getting a little protection from the afternoon. So I've got mine in that type of scenario where it gets sun during the day, and it's actually up against a brick wall, so it gets some radiant heat off of that during the wintertime, which is helpful for camellia as well, because they can be a little less hardy than some other shrubs. But that location is kind of where you want to have them, and I think everybody should have some camellia because it's one of the most beautiful flowering evergreen plants we can grow here.
And they had
And
a
if you
gorgeous
wanna
year
toast-
this year, too, didn't they?
Camellia,
And if you wanna-
Mine didn't.
Really?
And if you want to toast them crispy, have a brick home and plant them on the west side of
Yeah.
the house where they get all afternoon sun and that reflected heat off the brick, it will cook them. And again, like Austin mentioned, it might not kill them, but that's not where you want to use them.
No.
You really want to get them on an eastern to perhaps somewhat south of east, where they get that morning, early afternoon sun, and then shade through the rest of the day. If you want them to look nice, because there's more to camellias than just flowers. There's foliage, and if you put them in a spot where they get too much sun, the foliage is really going to take a beating. And there's no reason in putting a plant out of place.
There it is. How about, is it time to fertilize camellias here?
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
Sure, why not?
Yeah. I mean, they're not really actively growing yet. They're still tight in their bud, so they're not pushing really new growth. As long as you can keep that fertilizer around the base of the plant, and water it, put your fertilizer down, water it in sufficiently, and then after that, walk away. I mean, yeah, and then it's going to slowly feed through the season. You can use an evergreen, like a holly tone type of fertilizer, and that's good because camellias are an acidic kind of loving plant. So that's helpful with that. And yeah, go ahead and get it dropped, and it's going to use it in the spring.
Nice. All right. We got a question on our Facebook page from Peter. If my lilies have already broken through, can I still break them apart and replant them without killing them?
Oh, lilies.
Oh.
I wonder what kind of lily, like daylilies maybe? Or you think?
I mean, you can't kill daylilies.
Nah, you can't kill
do
daylilies
anything with them.
Yet.
I wouldn't think so either. I'm kind of confused by this. I've got some like Asiatic lilies at the house, but mine haven't started popping up
mine
yet.
haven't either.
She's
And I
seeing
haven't.
daffodils. Maybe that sometimes it's just confusing the language here of what they actually are.
Maybe.
Okay.
I mean, I
As
would
a
wait
general
until
rule,
next
no
year.
matter
but-
what it is, if it's starting to produce new growth, it's not the time you want to be dividing things.
Not really. No, you kind of should have already done it.
Even if it's been misidentified, you can pretty much say with almost all things, you're better off to do it, when it's not an active growth. If you're wanting to separate it, and move some to another location, or at least just give them more space, it's really not a good time to do it when everything is starting to pump up and produce new flowers and foliage for springtime. So might want to wait, take good notes, and do it at a more appropriate time, at least after the flower cycle is finished, and probably more like November.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Tips on planting poppies from seed. Can I just throw them on the ground? I love poppies and I grow them. And the way I sow them is I'll lightly till up the soil a little bit and then scatter them on the ground. Though I have just scattered them on top of my already established kind of wildflower bed, and they did fine. I grow the red oriental poppy, and it comes back every year. And mine, I actually took a picture and sent it to, I think, Tyler and Austin. Mine are coming up. They look so good, and I'm starting to see the little buds start to come up for that bloom. So you can scatter them, but just know they'll start to establish this year, and then next year they'll be even stronger and prettier. So you have to be patient with it. Gardening Inside Out is brought to you by Earth Mix Garden Products, creating regionally sourced high-quality soil blends and amendments for the sustainable-minded gardener. Fall and winter are great times to plant in the Southeast, and Earth Mix can help you with Landscape Soil Conditioner. Mix Landscape with your native soil to feed all winter long. Added mycorrhizal fungi help your plants get established faster and increase hardiness through the year ahead. Visit earthmix.net for more information and retailers near you. Remember, success begins at the ground level when you use Earth Mix Garden Products. Still got some seed questions. Can I toss out wildflower seeds straight into my lawn and pasture? Will it grow?
Maybe.
Yeah,
You can do it.
You could do
certainly
a
that.
lot of them.
You'd have to do a lot. You're not going to get the greatest germination when you just sow it straight into a pasture. You might see some here and there pop up, but you're not going to get just a perfect 100% germination, which with any packet of seed, you're probably not going to get 100%. But doing it that
you
way,
might not get 10%.
yeah, you might not get 10 on that one. So I don't necessarily recommend that. No.
If this is a time of year when, if for something like that, although aeration in the springtime is not a frequent event, you might consider doing that. And what that's going to do is that's going to
Give you some
open up that
yeah.
surface of the ground, allow that seed to make contact directly with the soil, and have a chance that with rains like we're having today to water that in and to get the seed somewhat covered. At least you're going to up your odds seriously. you could probably, by aerating alone, you could increase your germination from 10% up to maybe 30%. You got to have reasonable expectations. I would say, it's very reasonable that 70% of that seed won't do anything. Simply because if it gets dry for a few days, they're just going to desiccate and go away. So you have to be pretty lucky if you just put them on hard ground. It's no different. You wouldn't think about sowing tomato plants, Josh, putting tomato seeds down on a hard garden soil.
No.
And any other seed is no different. You really need to do some preparation. And if you've got an existing pasture you're trying to add something to, aeration gives you that opportunity to be able to do that without disturbing all the soil.
Hey, Linda on the YouTube channel is wondering, a 12-inch by 2-foot section of bark just fell off of my water maple. Is that a bad sign?
During the program, that's very bad. It just happened.
Yeah. I wonder why that. I mean, I wonder how big the plant is, first off. Plants can lose some of their bark and certainly heal over. I'm not sure why that would have happened. Maybe a grazing deer came across and hit it or something.
Yeah.
Lightning strike?
That would be more of a crack, I would think, and there'd be some black
wood
in it.
borers.
Yeah.
Maybe wood borers. There's a reason why that bark slipped off. I don't really know why, but I mean, look around the area where it came off and see if you can press in. If it feels like it's like rotting, that would be cause for concern a little bit. But really, I mean, if something happened, like a deer came across or whatever, like that plant will heal. Yeah, hey, y'all do yourself a favor and go to Google and just Google image the cork oak out in like the UK. That's how they get corks for wine bottles.
Yes.
Watch how they harvest that cork and see those trees after they're stripped of all their bark and how they come back. These trees have been living for hundreds and hundreds of years, but they go in and they harvest their bark every so often. It is a cool sight to see. Just Google it. Google the cork oak.
That's one of those rare exceptions. You couldn't do that with any other tree that I know of.
You wouldn't want to.
No.
Well, they just look so funny when they're stripped.
Austin, is that Quercus corcus?
No, I wish. I wish it was.
Oh, man.
You crack yourself up.
Tyler got tickled.
It was
over
the
there.
goofiest thing that landed in my little mind.
He's got to get himself a drum kit over there so he can do some rim shots.
Yeah.
He's probably already got it.
He's probably got a button over
He does.
there.
No, I don't know what I have.
Tyler, you brought up the Tyler cam a minute ago. Did you have something to say?
It was a long time ago.
It was like 2 minutes
It was
ago.
like 2 minutes ago.
No,
He
it wasn't
got
2
over
minutes.
it.
Maybe 3 minutes?
Well, I was just going to say to the wildflower in your yard question, I went ahead and just threw out a bunch of zinnia seeds, and I got pretty decent germination. I probably got, even with mowing my grass, 5 plants. And then the subsequent years, they reseeded themselves until it slowly dwindled to nothing again. But it was pretty powerful to say, well, yeah, actually, if you have to kind of look and see if you mow what's coming up in your yard and keeping your lawn mowed so the seeds have a chance to germinate against all those crazy aggressive grasses, you'll have better chances. And also, it just takes a while to establish wildflowers.
It does. And I will say, zinnias are very aggressive. They
are.
They could probably grow on a driveway. Not healthily, they wouldn't look good, but I could see a little plant sprouting up and maybe getting one bloom.
We're going to try a little trench across the front fence, and we're going to actually take my little tiller, and I'm going to take it all the way.
But if you're wanting to have a tidy lawn situation and wildflowers, they don't work together.
Nope.
You kind of got one or the other, because you mow those down to a few inches, it might not kill them immediately, but one, they're likely never to flower. Hence, what's the point? If you're, that's kind of the point of wildflowers. Is the flowers part of it? It's not the fact that they're wild.
Mm-hmm. So while we're also on the subject of that too, Caroline, not next week, but the week after, February 22nd, has a webinar on wildflower beds.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I'm a big wildflower gardener. I love them.
We can't wait for that one.
We're going to go to town. We're going to talk about the wildness.
You can register
of
at
wildflower beds.
batesnursery.com. Scroll down to the boot camp slide, click it, and it'll take you to the link to register.
Hey, let's talk for just a minute about the educational things we do here at Bates Nursery and Garden Center, or Bates Nursery Botanical Boot Camp, or all of our various entries that Caroline, Austin, and Tyler, accents mostly, Caroline and Tyler. Austin gets to be on the camera side of it.
The only side I should be on.
The camera facing side.
Yeah, I'm not allowed on the other side.
Let him run his mouth.
Oh,
But we really put out a lot of content with great regularity on all manner of subjects. So if you've got something that you have questions about, don't hesitate to go there and check it out and just search through. We've got literally hundreds of different videos out there about all different things. Some are very concise, short, and to the point. Others are quite long forms. If you're looking for a lot of detail, you have that option to you as well. So check it out, Josh. I know you do.
I do.
You're probably you go home every evening and study.
I do.
The Bates Nursery Botanical Boot Camp.
BNBBC, man. Come on.
We most recently uploaded edible garden planning, Ben's webinar from 2 weeks ago. So that's just hit YouTube. And then also Austin's hydrangea pruning masterclass.
Yep.
With Caroline wielding a very detailed camera to zoom in and show the cuts and what each one likes as far as pruning goes. It's all there on the YouTube page. Catch Ben online next week. Ornamental garden planning. So this is the complement to the edible garden planning webinar. And he's going to be talking about all the flowery good stuff and even some edible ornamentals in there as well that you can mix in.
it's good for Ben because Ben actually got his degree in landscape design from the University of Knoxville. Yeah, UT Knoxville. So he's got his degree in design. So he's got a good feel for it.
Very cool.
He does.
I love
he knows
Benny.
a lot.
Love that guy.
Ben is
Miriam's
great.
got a question.
Hey, Miriam.
What's up, Miriam?
Good morning.
Should I fertilize my new last fall azaleas and rhodos? And if so, when?
You know what, Miriam? Why not? Why not?
Why not? Just do it.
Yeah, I mean,
Why not?
You know, like I was talking earlier with the camellias, the Hollytone is a great product for your azaleas and your rhododendron. They're acid loving, and it's their first kind of growing season. It sounds like you planted them last fall, so why not? Let's get some organic material in there. Let's help them out a little bit. They'll push and they'll look really nice for you.
And I will say, why not, so long as you're using organic?
Yes.
And here's the difference and why you would not want to use a chemical fertilizer, particularly on azaleas or rhododendrons, is that if you flash a large amount of chemical fertilizer, the plant will like it so much so that it will likely, and I have seen this happen on both azaleas and rhododendrons, where they pushed a lot of new growth, so much so that they push the new buds off before they ever flower.
Happened to me. Happened to me.
So if you're using an organic fertilizer, it does not push that ammoniacal form of nitrogen, the ammonium nitrate. What's in there in organics is almost non-existent. It's a very, very small amount.
Right.
It's much slower release. So you don't have those concerns. Just another good reason to consider using organics is that it's a lot more forgiving than using chemical fertilizers. So good question, Miriam.
Yeah.
Very good.
Good to see you in a way, Miriam. All right, we got some live questions in on Facebook, so let's go ahead and get to those.
Sure.
What are best practices for relocating plants? For example, I have a slow-growing mugo pine that other faster-growing plants are starting to crowd.
Okay. Well, like we talked about earlier in the show, the first best practice is to do this during dormancy. So during the wintertime is when you really want to move this. And relocating is not all that hard as long as you get as much root as you can, like really dig a nice big hole if you can help it and get as much of the root ball as you can. That's going to be helpful. And then like David always says, have your new hole ready and have it just already dug, ready to go. That way you can take that plant and quickly move it to its new home, pack it back in nice and tight, seed it into the earth nicely, and then water it very well, and then walk away.
What a great weekend to do it.
This week would have been spot on, as will the coming week once we get beyond the rain. One of the things that is somewhat curious to me is the numbers of questions that we get about transplanting things after the time has already passed. We are still in that time. So if you're considering it for most things like a mugo pine, it's a great time to go ahead and do that. Just like Austin mentioned, get that hole dug first where you're going to transplant it to. That way you greatly minimize the amount of time it's out of the ground. Now it's not as urgent this time of year, but if you know you're going to be planting it in another spot, it's the correct order to do it in. So dig that hole, dig it out, transplant it into it. And even if it's just rained, go ahead and water it thoroughly to settle the soil in, get the air pockets out from around the root ball. That's very important from a settling standpoint, and to get it ready to grow on. It's not all just about getting it watered and wet. It needs to get the air pockets settled out of there, and that's the best way to do it.
I feel like Caroline should have answered that question because she loves relocating plants, don't you?
I do. I relocate plants all the time. And I have good, I don't think I've lost any, but I relocate them when they're dormant. I replanted about 10 types of switchgrass this fall.
Carolyn might
love to
suffer
move
from what
stuff.
is known as relocationitis.
I do. I'm about to relocate 3 Florida Sunshine Elysium probably next week.
Ugh.
Listen, they need to go. They need to be in a new spot. It's just how I do things and how I enjoy it. All right, when should I candle prune new growth on Skyland's Oriental spruce?
Oh, the candle pruning. Okay, so we talk about candles with pines and spruce, things that send up, mainly pines. You think about it with mugos, they'll send up the little, they look like candlesticks pretty much, but they're littler. And that's where new growth comes from. So you really, if you want to shorten that and make sure your growth is a lot tighter, then you want to go ahead and get that done pretty much now. Anytime over they're not cracking new growth yet. So let's get those shortened to the height you want them at, and then it'll bust nice and tight for you. And that's probably the best time to do it.
What kind of pine was he talking about?
One of the
He was
things
talking
you
about an
can
Oriental
also
spruce.
One of the things you can also do, and it's particularly true on pines, when you have those candles pushing out, you'll generally have, say, 4 or 5 side candles in a central one.
Yeah.
You can go in there and just with your thumb or with a pair of hand printers, take the center one out, and that will force that energy to the lateral branching. And if you wanted to continue to grow up as a terminal, like in the very central leader, if there is one, don't do it there, but do it everywhere else. It'll make it much thicker and fuller, and it won't have that trimmed look to it. It'll just be naturally thick and full.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Additional support for Gardening Inside Out is brought to you by Bates Nursery and Garden Center, a third-generation nursery located in Nashville, Tennessee, and 20-time recipient for Nashville's Best Garden Center, offering the widest selection of new arrivals for fall, like specimen conifers, Japanese maples, and pansies in nearly every color. Open year-round, minutes from the heart of Nashville in beautiful Whites Creek, Tennessee. Browse their selection online anytime at batesnursery.com. Bates Nursery and Garden Center, beautifying Nashville since 1932.
Hey, but there's also stuff that's outside, and we haven't had this happen in a while or heard this thing.
Oh, what?
The sound.
What?
Are you talking
The
about
sounder.
What's in Bloom with Austin?
Yay, it's back.
I forgot about. We got 3 things in bloom, y'all. 3. All right. We're starting off strong this year. We've already talked about it. Hellebore.
Yep.
Oh, during the rest of the year, they're just hella boring. But this time of year, they are in bloom, looking good. So hellebore's in bloom in your yards. Caroline showed me a picture, so I know this is true. She has a single daffodil bloom up and yellow and blooming. Daffodils in bloom. And then there was one more.
That I
And
sent you.
it's left me.
Witch hazel.
Witch hazel, that's right.
My
So-
witch hazel is currently in full bloom, and it looks so good.
Mine
Nice.
hadn't popped yet.
Yes, yours hadn't popped yet? Okay, well,
It's close.
here you go. Those
I
are
put
the
a picture
3.
on my Instagram.
Witch
if you wanna
hazel.
Check it out.
Man, I got a witch hazel in the yard, and the deer absolutely murder it. They just murder it. I planted a little tiny guy because I'm cheap, and they just come in. They constantly eat the tips out. I don't know why witch hazel tastes good to them. They don't really mess with
You're
much
not-
anything else.
Makes their
You're
breath
not
nice and
cheap,
fresh,
Austin. You're that
probably.
guy that's got the big boxwood budget.
That's the only thing he spends.
You're right. I don't-
Boxwood and petunias.
I don't skimp on the boxwoods.
Well, we did buy ours at the same time. They came in off a truck. We got them because it was Maple Valley, who we recently got in, and I bought an Edgeworthia yesterday or the day before that we got in. Maple Valley's great. But they got in the American witch hazel. They were small. We both planted them at the same time. Mine's in
Ours is witch
full
hazel
show right now.
Diane.
Mine's in no show right now. Possibly dead.
No,
no,
maybe-
it's not dead. It's
maybe
not dead.
one day
The
it
deer
will
just
be.
graze it, man. They just love it. I
Speaking
don't know
of
why.
blooms, Risha in Smyrna wants to know, will her cherry tree bloom this year? It didn't bloom last year, 2023, after the hard freeze we had in December of
Very
2022.
good question. Reish, good to hear from you. And I'm assuming you're talking about a Kwanzaa cherry. And for some weird reason, Kwanzaa cherry did not bloom last year. Not anywhere. Yoshino's bloomed. The other one, Akabono or whatever, like there's other ones that bloomed. Everything was fine. But for some reason, Kwanzaa did not bloom. I
And
really
they don't
hope it
bloom
does.
first either. So
No.
it is quite strange. They're the later blooming ones. So that is a head scratcher. Right
It was. Cherries need
Let me go ahead
cold
and
enough
scratch my-
temperatures to bloom. And I don't think last year, even though we did have the 3 days of ridiculous cold, we didn't have consistent, really cold all that much last year. And that's my only thing I can think that made the cherries not bloom last year. I'm hoping we've had cold enough temps and enough chilling hours this year so your Kwanzaa blooms. Because what's the point of a Kwanzaa cherry without
Fingers
blooms?
crossed, right?
Fingers
Yep, let's wait it
crossed.
out.
It'll happen. All right, planted 12 green giants last year, and they look a little brown. Is this some kind of disease that I can use something to remedy?
No. It's not a disease. It's the natural
Oh,
bronze.
winter.
Such
Yeah.
a quick response.
It's the natural bronze of the arborvitae. We should write a book on it. It happens every year. It's arborvitae across the board. No matter if you buy a shrub, you buy a tree, whatever it is, arborvitae is going to bronze a little bit over the wintertime, and this is totally normal. Stick it out. It's going to be fine.
Stick it out, it'll be okay.
Hang out and stick it out.
Hang out and stick it out. That
As
is a
Austin would
direct
say
quote
in
from
the-
Austin.
That was a blooper. Why did y'all have to bring that up? I didn't mean to say that.
because it was really great.
It's the
I'll
title of
reshare
his
it.
upcoming book, Hang Out, Stick It Out. by Austin.
by Austin
The Bates
Lowen.
nursery years.
Okay, any fun plants to use in front of my house? It's shady with dappled sun.
Fun.
Fun plants. I will give you one that I
Go
keep
ahead.
wanting to talk about on the no down, and we haven't brought it, and you can probably guess what it is. The arborvitae fern. That seems fun. It will thrive in shade because it is. Well, we were talking about that the other day. It's not really a true fern.
It's Selaginella.
Yeah. So,
That's
Interesting.
easy for
It's-
you to say.
but these ferns look insane. I mean, it's called an arborvitae fern because it has its leaves look like an arborvitae, and I haven't planted one yet. I need to actually buy them so I can test them out. But I am so intrigued by this fern that we have at the nursery right now.
Cool. Hey, you
It's
know,
still up.
I've got one. And
What?
shout out to my friend Shirley Hood, who lives out in Clarksville. I've toured her garden twice now. She's a good friend of mine, a British lady, and she's got a Pieris.
A what?
Pieris japonica.
Okay.
She sent me a picture, no joke, y'all, this morning. She was up looking at it. She has a 9-foot Pieris japonica.
Wow.
It is beautiful. It's an evergreen bloomer that likes it's a pretty shady spot, and hers is tucked in her wood line. It's huge. It is in full bloom this morning. Shirley, good for you. I'm so happy you get to see that. That's
Another
a fun plant.
of those toughest of plants to try to grow.
It
We
is.
have sold them over the years. The overwhelming majority of individuals who attempt to grow them are unsuccessful.
That's
so
me.
Congratulations. That's no small feat.
Yeah, no, I think
They are
she's
tough.
had that for like 20 years. She's been in that home for a while, and she planted it early. And it's like I said, to get a Pieris 9-foot, y'all, you're talking, like I said, decade. I mean, more to get it that big. And it's like David said, it is a notoriously hard plant to grow for a lot of people. It needs that perfect site. Well, she found it, and hers is in bloom. Good job, Shirley. Love you.
Love you.
Site,
Not
perfect
having a-
soil,
Yeah.
perfect everything.
Everything.
If you do everything absolutely correct all the time, then you have a chance. Obviously, she is.
Yep.
On YouTube,
Mine
it
didn't
sounds
last
like
2 years.
Yeah, on YouTube, it sounds like Jane didn't pick the best spot. She said, "Ugh, I just planted a baby witch hazel in the fall, surrounded it with netting to keep the deer from eating it over the winter. Will it ever be able to leave it without growing without the deer protection?"
Once it gets big enough, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, once it outgrows where the deer can reach, I would say. But they seem to love mine, so I'm in the same boat as you. I didn't even put a net around mine. But it's kind of annoying. Like nets and that's just annoying because you got to look at that too, you know, like with your tree. So it's like, well, would I
grow
rather the
pretty
deer
quick,
graze a little or look at a dumb net around my plant?
You would rather deer. Deer don't mess with mine. Although I'll get home and they'll have just destroyed the entire thing now that I said that.
No, I live
Wrong
in
way.
town. I haven't seen any deers. I mean, it's all good.
All right, let's talk about burning bush. How far down can you prune burning bush, and when is
the
the best
ground.
time to do so?
David nailed it.
To the dirt. That's the shirt we need.
Pretty much as far as you want is what David means by that. Now, to
Yep.
keep yourself a shrub, to keep yourself
Yeah.
having something, take it in half or whatever. It depends on your spot and how big it is and where you want it to get to. But don't worry about hurting it. You can't.
Yeah, that's my point. Is you can't, you won't kill it by trimming it, regardless of how far back you do it. Even if you did it to the ground, that will not kill it.
Nope.
So, shape it up nice. I'm a huge fan. If you're going to have those in your landscape, is prune them really hard at this time of year, at least half, maybe 2/3 of the way back. A lot of the cultivars of it, the older types, really get large. Cut them severely.
Yes.
Do not dabble around with it. Maybe wait until you're slightly angry and do it. And it will help you to work off some of that angst.
Yeah.
Chop it.
But don't wait too long or you cut off the fire, right?
Cut them hard.
Can't cut off the fire.
Well,
Maybe use a chainsaw.
The fire is out, Josh.
Yes.
Chop it.
That's right.
Chop it. All right. So this is a very popular plant that we've been getting a lot of questions about, olive trees. So someone is asking olive tree soil, drainage, and light condition. So you're going to want a well-draining soil. I do recommend the Earth Mix Proganics Eye and mixing some pine fines that we sell, which is just finely shredded pine mulch. It's going to help with drainage. And that pot is going to need good drainage as well. So I recommend using terracotta or ceramic. Terracotta is great because if you overwater it, it will help wick out extra moisture in the soil. So you don't stand as much of a chance as drowning that plant. And now light can be a little bit tricky if you've got your olive tree indoors because they like as much sun as you can get. I mean, they're almost like a cactus if you think about care as far as light requirements go, which is why people have such a hard time, especially this time of year, keeping their olive trees happy, and a lot are losing their leaves right now. Like I talk about all the time, I actually keep mine outside. I keep it in a pot. It stays outside unless temperatures dip pretty low, like I brought it in a couple weeks ago when we got the snow and then brought it right back out. But good drainage, well-draining soil, and as much direct sunlight as you can give it, and your olive tree should be pretty happy.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay. Any plants that would be good by my pond waterfall to soften rocks and flow over the sides and stream?
Hey.
Can you establish
Hard
some
rocks.
moss?
You want to soften them. Soften those rocks up.
Soften
Some
them.
moss. What we just got in too.
Is it horsetail reed?
No, that would work, but that would spread
It
and
would
take over. We got some primrose in.
Oh.
Primrose is a good little, like, kind of water-ish loving, not like constant wet all the time, okay, y'all? But if it's like close to the pond, they're really beautiful flowering plants in the early spring. So that could be an option.
Itea, possibly.
Itea would be good. That can handle constant wet feet pretty much. And there's a number of grasses that look really nice against a pond. If you want to go like a
your
tropical look.
sedges.
Yes, sedges. If you want to go a tropical look, you could use elephant ears.
Yep.
They do really well against a pond setting. So there's a number of plants you can use for this. A number of ferns I think would work well as long as you got some shade.
I'll just jump in here and say around my pond, this is a pre-established pond that I got when I got my house. Creeping phlox is growing around the edge, and it has actually really grown over in a way that really, like, right on the border of the pond, it kind of spilled over, and I love it.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love
sounds
creeping
beautiful,
phlox.
It takes years of
It
advanced
is,
planning
along
to
with the
make
sound
that
of the
happen.
water.
We need to see pictures of this pond.
Yep.
Y'all, we got to get a hydrangea question in.
Okay.
When to cut back hydrangeas? Now or is it too early?
Maybe.
It's a loaded question. We already
Complicated.
talked about his
Complicated.
Bates Botanical Boot Camp webinar.
Watch the video.
Yes.
Please watch the video. It'll explain everything you need to know about when and what to cut or not to cut on hydrangeas, because I need to know which hydrangea you're talking about, or I can't tell you whether to cut it or not.
We will put the link up for Austin's webinar. It's very informative.
Yep.
It's quick, too, for how much information you fit in there. I think it's about 45 minutes. When you
Yeah.
did your rose webinar, it was about an hour and 45 minutes. So we were able to bring that down a
You
little
talk
bit.
about the bloom shapes, and I mean that's the thing that you got to know, right?
Well,
I got very detailed.
Austin defines the 5 most popular varieties of hydrangea.
Yeah.
And the issue on hydrangeas is so that the submitter of the question has some understanding of why we're not while we're being evasive in answering, is that it's a question of, does it flower on new wood or does it flower on the previous year's wood? And if you cut it now and it flowers on the previous year's wood, you're going to cut all your flowers off. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to kill it. We've got oak leaf hydrangeas, which are an example of something that sets bud on the previous year wood. But every few years, we wind up cutting those back pretty severely and just sacrificing the flowers in order to get that nice, dense, flush growth. So if you're okay with that, it won't kill them. It's just that, you may be sacrificing flowers if it is one of the hydrangeas that blooms on the previous year's wood. And if you don't know whether it's previous or not, if it blooms in the spring, that means it's the previous year.
Yep.
If it's a summer flowering type, it's going to flower on new wood. And there are more nuances than that, but that's generality will help you a little bit.
Real quick, Deborah K wants to know, is a Spiderweb Aurelia hardy here? Zone 7 plant tag says. Real quick.
Which one?
Zone Spiderweb Aurelia.
Right on the line.
Right on the line.
Right on the line.
So you're taking
Find a perfect
shot.
spot. Probably is.
Okay. Hey, folks, music means that we got to get out of here for this week. But, hey, come out here to Bates Nursery and Garden Center until 2 o'clock. But next Saturday morning, we'll be here for another hour of Gardening Inside Out. Stay tuned on all the social media. There's notes and information all through the week. We'll see you right here next week from the Green Room Studios at Bates Nursery and Garden Center.
Thank you for tuning into the Gardening Inside Out podcast. If you're looking for more information or more from your hosts, don't forget that we have a live Saturday morning broadcast, 8 a.m. Central Time on YouTube and Facebook. You can also follow us on our Instagram channel. That's @Gardening Inside Out for more posts, reels, and in-depth dives to topics and things we've discussed on the show. If our content resonates with you, consider giving us a follow, like, and subscription on all of our social media pages. See you next time.